Hello and welcome to another Tech Tuesday, where today we will be talking about permissions, groups, users, and integrating with Active Directory. To start with today, we will actually be working in ASM Admin, which I have open on my computer right now. So first off today, we will talk about group and user permissions. Now, the way Activu permissions works is permissions are assigned by group, not by individual users. So in order to show you this, I will actually go in and create both a test user and a test group so that you can see how that's done and what permission levels are available for use in the Activu system. So to start with, we will go to groups. In here, you can see that I have a number of groups available. I'm going to go ahead and add a new group so you can see how that works. In here, once the window opens, the first thing I'm going to do is type the name of the group. For this, I will just type test. And then next, I want to go to the next tab, which is rights. Once I'm in there, you will see on the top that there are 3 radio buttons, one for standard users, one for power users, and one for administrators. Administrators is pretty self-explanatory. Administrators have access to everything in the Activu system and have permissions to use all sources and abilities in the system. Standard users are very limited users. They essentially can only use scenarios, which are push button interfaces that work in the Activu system. They will not have access to remote control or any collaboration features. Power users is stuck somewhere in the middle there. Power users is very customizable. You can give them permissions down here under additional rights as you see fit, and I'll actually go through now each of those and what they do. So starting off, remote control is pretty self-explanatory. Allows access to the remote control interface, so that allows them to see walls and the content that's on them and be able to interface with them using sources, layouts, templates, etc. Preview allows you to actually preview display walls, so that means being able to see the content that's on those display walls within remote control. Record is actually a deprecated feature, so we're not going to worry about that one. Audio. If you have an audio system integrated with your Activu system, the audio checkbox will give the users in this group access to those audio controls, being able to map audio to different places. And of course, the audio is customizable as far as what zones and sources people have access to, and we'll get to that in a second. Active Share. This gives access to the Active Share interface, so that's allowing users to share parts of their desktop or applications from their desktop with other users or walls. View screens. So in remote control, there is the ability to have multiple view screens for each wall. This gives users access to be able to use those different view screens. Whiteboarding, so there's the capability of Activu to whiteboard on the main wall from remote control. This gives you access to that. And being able to save whiteboard drawings is this next checkbox. Layouts and templates. This one is a little misleading. So if you have access to remote control, you will have access to use layouts and templates. However, if you want this group to be able to save new layouts and templates, or to save layouts and templates over existing ones to update them, this is the checkbox you would use. Remote KM, that is being able to use the keyboard and mouse option for controlling display servers. Scripts, this is not for using scripts, so like you would through a scenario, but actually to be able to create and save scripts. Scheduler is also a deprecated feature. We'll skip that one. Team Share. Team Share is the collaborative ability that we have in our software to be able to open a virtual space and be able to add sources to it and then collaborate with other users and the wall using that space, also allowing chat. That is that checkbox. Scenarios is those push button interfaces I was talking about before. That gives access to that. Status server is not an often used feature, but This this checkbox allows people to post and retrieve to the status server. Mobility read, so that is being able to see Activu content through the mobility app or the mobility website. Edit, delete, and add are all all features of the same thing. So this is for the mobility content server, being able to read, edit, delete, and add items, as well as removing them, which is that last permission. So all of these permissions are available through power users only. I emphasize that because under standard users, you can still check these boxes. However, these will not affect a standard user's permissions if you check these boxes. They are only affected if the users are powered users. So the next tab we're going to go to is sources. In sources, you can see that I have a huge list of sources in my system. Some of them are great, some of them are not so great, but they're all there. Now, here is where you would actually give access to this group, to whatever sources they need to see. If you wanted to give them all, on the bottom here is a double chevron that would allow you to do that and give them access to all sources. As you can see, that's populating that right now. Or remove all sources. As you can see, boom. Just for this example, I'm going to grab a couple of sources. You can shift click, you can control click to select multiple sources and add them to the group sources. Under audio sources, same thing, but for audio. So these are audio sources that I have within this Activu system. I could give access to all, none, or some of these sources. Same thing with audio zones. I have 3 audio zones in this system. Devices. Devices are different physical devices that are attached to the Activu system. As you can see in here, I have some DVI switches. I have my walls connected in here as well, and a couple of cameras. You can give access to these actual devices through this page. Under scenarios, same deal, being able to give access to different scenarios for this group. Same thing with layouts, scripts, same thing as well, being able to execute certain scripts or even see them and not all of them. Now, panel wall areas I'm going to skip because that's somewhat of a deprecated feature. And wall areas is the last one I want to talk about because this one is interesting. So in here, under wall areas, you'll see by default that enabled is set to no for every single wall area that is in this system. Now, if I go to one, say for instance this control room 4x2 Mitsu wall, which is my main wall in this system, you'll see this checkbox here for disable wall area. If I check that, now you'll see enabled is set to yes. And now you'll also see that there are these menu items here as well. So location and size. Let me explain what these do. If, for instance, you want a group to only be able to have access to a certain portion of a display wall, this is where you would set that up. So, for instance, if I wanted to give someone a permission to, say, the first 1920 by 1080p panel of a display wall, the location starts by the left top of a wall and you set it by pixels. So if I wanted to give the top leftmost 1920 by 1080 panel, then I would set that location as 00 and I'd set the size to 1920 by 1080. If, for instance, I wanted to give them access to the center of this particular wall, what I would do is I would start on the left, but I would start at 1920. I'd still start at the top, so that would still be 0. And my size would be half of 7680, whatever that happens to be, by 2400. So that would give me the center of this particular wall. Now, if I do change these, I need to go ahead and click this save area to make sure that that content saves. And once I'm all done with this, I will say add group, and the group will be added. I'm not going to do that at this particular moment. Next up, once you have a group, now you can go ahead and create users to add to that group. So I will go ahead and add a user right now. Adding a user is pretty simple. In here, you can see that there's a spot for the username. That is pretty straightforward. It's whatever you want to call your user. First name, last name, description, all self-explanatory. In here, password is not set. This is where I'd set this person's password, put it in once, verify it. Down here, you have a couple of options. You can disable this account. You can set it to have an expiring password, and you can also set it to receive login, log-off notifications of other users. In this second tab, we have member of. This is where you would select your group. So if I go in here and say add, you will see all of the groups that are available in the Activu system, and I can add them to as many groups as I'd like, but one at a time. Under contacts, this is really used if you're using the collaboration features of the Activu system. So if you are using Team Share or Active Share, you will want to add users to this user's contact list. Again, you can do all or just some. If you'd like to add a photo, you can do that here. And this is for Microsoft Link integration or Skype for Business. And then this last is for application-specific parameters, which is very rarely used. So that is how you would add a user. Now, all of that being said, one thing I wanted to note on this first tab in ASM Admin under General is that you can change the level of strength that a password needs to be within the Activu system. Right now it's on level 0, weak, but you can set it to 1, 2, or 3, which changes the complexity level needed to create an Activu password for a user. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, and then I will actually demonstrate this all to you, is using Active Directory authentication. We absolutely recommend using Active Directory authentication because it simplifies the permissions in an Activu system, and as an added bonus, gives single sign-on capabilities for the Activu system. So in order to set that up, you would do that right here. Right now it's using Activu authentication, as you can see, but I'm going to go ahead and select Use Windows Authentication. Now under here, require LDAP authentication, and you have to give an LDAP path. Mine happens to be activudemo.com. So you're just looking for the fully qualified domain of the Active Directory instance. Now that I've done that, I can hit save, and as you can see, they have saved. Now, what's going to change in here is that now when I go to groups, instead of adding a group that I name, I'm going to go ahead and hit add in the group, and I'm going to check this box that says group is a member of the domain. So now a box appears here saying select domain group. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I can put in a search filter here, or I can just hit search. I have to put in my credentials for Active Directory. And as you can see, all of my Active Directory groups have populated. I'm going to use this Activu users. All right, so now I can't obviously change the name because it's predefined by Active Directory. But now I can go through and set up what permissions this group has. So I'm going to go to rights. I'm going to make this a power user, let them have remote control as well as preview, and I'll give them access to, let's see, I will give them access to scenarios as well. Now under sources, I only need a couple, but I want to demonstrate how this works, so I'm going to pick a couple here. Here they are. Let's just pick these 5 sources here. I'm going to add them in. All right, I'm not going to worry about audio sources because I did not give this group access to adjust audio anyway, or audio zones or devices. I did give them access to scenarios though, so I will pick a. Let's just select these demo scenarios and add them in. Layouts, we'll just pick a couple here. Why not these 3? Add them in. Scripts, I'll give a couple of generic ones just because. All right, we're going to skip panel wall areas, and now we'll go to wall areas. So for the purposes of this demo, I just want to give access to this 4x2 Mitsu wall, which is my main wall. So I will uncheck this box to enable it, and I will hit save here. I'm going to give access to the entire wall. And now I'll say, actually, you know what? Let's not give access to the entire wall. Let's give access to, let's see, we will say, let's say 7,000, just for fun. Doesn't actually fit into any monitors, but that's okay. So we'll save that, and we'll add that group. Added one group, great, okay. So now I'm going to go to users and add a user, and I'm going to check this same box. User is a member of a domain group. Now this box appears, select domain user, and that's going to ask me if I want to add a domain group for this user, which I do. So I'll say yes, go down here to my Activu users group that I just added, select that, and now I'm just going to search and see what users are available to me in that group. As you can see, there's just some operators, so I'll go ahead and hit operator 1, add him in. Great. Member of Activu users, awesome. I didn't give access to this group for any collaboration, so I'm not going to worry about any of the rest of these. Now, even though this user is a member of the domain group, you still have to set an independent password. I won't lie and I will tell you that it doesn't necessarily make any sense, but what I usually do is just set this password to Activu, just because it requires to be there. Now I will go ahead and add this user and say OK, and now I have a new operator 1 set to be in the Activu system. All right, now I'm going to show you how that user looks when I log into the Activu system. I'll go in here and go to access point, and I'm going to go ahead and put in operator 1. Put in that operator's password. Because this computer is not logged in as operator 1, I cannot do single sign-on. I'll go ahead and log in. All right, and now the Activu toolbar has appeared. I'll double click on that to show it. And as you can see, I only have access to 2 buttons. The scenarios button, in which I have those 2 demo scenarios that I mentioned earlier, and the remote control button. So when I open up remote control, there are 2 things I want to point out in here. Number 1, as you can see, I can see this control room wall, but you will see that there is this blank space on the right-hand side. That blank space is the section of the wall that I did not give access to this user. So they can see 77,000 pixels by 2,400 pixels. That is the extent of what is showing on my screen. The other thing I would like to point out is because I gave permissions to this user for only 5 sources, I have a couple of sources up on this wall that this user does not have permissions to see. So you will see that there are some sources that are showing as light blue, and you will see that some sources are showing in gray. Those sources in gray are actually sources that this user cannot access. So if I actually try to click on different sources, the gray sources are not selectable by this user. When I highlight over a source that I do have access to, I see these buttons and I can right click on it. If I highlight over a source that I do not have access to, I cannot click on it or right click on it. It shows a generic menu. Just to emphasize this point, I'm actually going to hit this preview button up in the top right hand corner. And as you can see, I am previewing the sources that I have access to, but the sources that I do not have access to are continuing to be grayed out. So that is a basic introduction on how to use Activu permissions, groups, Active Directory authentication, etc. I thank you for joining us today for this Tech Tuesday, and I hope that you will be able to join us for future ones as well. Thanks for watching.